A 17-year-old boy who works part-time at Pizza Hut pulls up to his house in a stunning Porsche. His parents are immediately suspicious, knowing there's no way his after-school job could have paid for such an expensive car. "Where did you get that car?" they shout, astonished. "I bought it today," the boy replies calmly. "With what money?" his mom demands. "We know how much a Porsche costs, and there's no way you can afford it," the boy shrugs. "It's used, and I got a great deal. I only paid $20 for it." His parents are even more shocked. "Who would sell a Porsche for $20? The woman up the street," the boy explains. "She just moved in. I delivered a pizza to her, and she offered to sell me the Porsche for $20. Baffled, his parents rush to the neighbor's house, ready for an explanation. They find her calmly planting flowers in her yard. "I'm the father of the boy you sold a Porsche to for $20, the dad says. "We need to know why you sold it so cheap." The woman, without looking up, responds, "I got a call from my husband this morning. I thought he was on a business trip in Florida, but it turns out he ran off to Hawaii with his secretary and doesn't plan on coming back." The boy's mom, still confused, asks, "But what does that have to do with selling our son a Porsche for $20? With a satisfied smile, the woman replies, "My husband told me to sell his new Porsche and send him the money, so I did." A cop was patrolling late at night in a well-known lover spot, famous for all obscene activities. He sees a couple in a car, with the interior light brightly glowing. The cop carefully approaches the car to get a closer look. Then he sees a young man behind the wheel, reading a computer magazine. He immediately notices a young woman in the rear seat, knitting. Puzzled by this surprising situation, the cop walks to the car and gently raps on the driver's window. The young man lowers his window. Yes, officer?" The cop says, "What are you doing?" The young man says, "Well, officer, I'm reading a magazine." Pointing towards the young woman in the back seat, the cop says, "And her, what is she doing?" The young man shrugs. "Sir, I believe she's knitting a pullover sweater." Now, the cop is totally confused. A young couple, alone in a car, at night in a lover's lane, and nothing obscene is happening. The cop asks, "What's your age, young man?" The young man says, "I'm 22, sir." The cop asks, "And her, what's her age?" The young man looks at his watch and replies, "She'll be 18 in 11 minutes. A powerful emperor advertised for a new chief samurai. Only 3 applied for the job: a Japanese, a Chinese, and a Jewish samurai. Number 1 samurai: "Demonstrate your skills," commanded the emperor. The Japanese samurai stepped forward, opened a tiny box, and released a fly. He drew his samurai sword and swish. The fly fell to the floor, neatly divided in 2. "What a feat," said the emperor. "Number 2 samurai: "Show me what you can do." The Chinese samurai smiled confidently, stepped forward, and opened a tiny box, releasing a fly. He drew his samurai sword and swish, swish. The fly fell to the floor, neatly quartered. "That is skill," nodded the emperor. "How are you going to top that, number 3 samurai?" Number 3 samurai stepped forward, opened a tiny box, released 1 fly, drew his samurai sword, and swoosh, flourished his sword so mightily that a gust of wind blew through the room. But the fly was still buzzing around in disappointment. And the emperor said, "What kind of skill is that? The fly isn't even dead. But he will never have children." The day after his wife vanished in a kayaking accident, Long, a man from Anchorage, opened his door to find 2 serious-looking Alaska State Troopers standing before him. "Mr. Wilkins, we regret to inform you that we have news regarding your wife," one trooper began. "Tell me! Did you find her?" Wilkins blurted out anxiously. The troopers exchanged glances. One spoke. "We have some bad news, some good news, and some fantastic news. Which would you like to hear first?" Bracing himself, a pale Mr. Wilkins responded, "Give me the bad news." The trooper said, "I'm sorry, sir, but we recovered your wife's body in Kachamak Bay this morning." "Oh no!" gasped Wilkins. After a moment, he gathered himself and asked, "So, what's the good news?" The trooper explained, "Well, when we brought her up, she had 12 25-pound king crabs and 6 large Dungeness crabs attached to her. We're confident you're entitled to a share of the catch." Stunned, Wilkins asked, "If that's the good news, then what's the fantastic news?" With a straight face, the trooper replied, "We're pulling her up again tomorrow." A woman went to a doctor's office. She was seen by one of the new doctors, but after about 4 minutes in the examination room, she burst out, screaming as she ran down the hall. An older doctor stopped and asked her what the problem was, and she explained. He had her sit down and relax in another room. The older doctor marched back to the first and demanded, "What's the matter with you? Mrs. Terry is 63 years old. She has 4 grown children and 7 grandchildren, and you told her she was pregnant?" The new doctor continued to write on his clipboard and said, "Does she still have the hiccups?" So this TV station reporter was interviewing a 103-year-old guy known as the oldest person in the county. Among other things, she asked him what he thought was the greatest invention of his lifetime. He says, "Oh, that's easy. It's the thermos bottle." The startled reporter says, "Really? Why?" The old guy says, "It keeps things hot, don't it?" She says, yes, it does." He says, "It keeps things cold, don't it?" "Yeah." She says, "They do." "Right," the old guy says. "How does it know?" "I was sitting on the sofa last night watching TV when my wife from the bedroom yelled, 'Do you ever get pains on the chest like someone's got a voodoo doll and they're stabbing it?' I replied, 'No.' Then she asked, 'How about now?'